to take us in a little bit of a different direction. Earlier during his opening remarks, Calvin said, we have to speak truth to power. I'm paraphrasing. And art is one of those things that speaks truth to power. And I want to give you all a moment to opine. Why has art been stripped out of our everyday lives? And why is it not directly injected into zoning? Chris, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I have a positive take on this, that art is very alive. Every day I talk to artists. I'm on a tour right now. Part and Hash, which is my rap name, Part and Hash Nikovsky's Great American Adventure, and I'm going around the country speaking to other artists and people that do amazing work, no matter how small or how big. And I've been in Massachusetts, I've been in Florida, I've been in Texas, I'm going to California, I've been in Maine, New York, keep naming places. Everywhere I go, I meet people who are making amazing, creative designs, ideas, and working with community. Events like this, where we're all from such different backgrounds, but I see it. One of the things is affordability. Where I live in New York, people can't afford to move anymore and be artists. When I moved to New York, you could sell comedy tickets. And that's like a running joke of people that move to New York who sell comedy tickets until they become actors. You make no money ever selling the comedy tickets. It's the hustle they get you with. But you can afford to stay long enough to find real work. When I think about the amount of entertainment versus creative art, and the amount of content and young people being cultured into content creation instead of what Moses is hitting on, Muddy Waters was not just content. That's culture, that's history, that's being, that's community. You're talking about symbology and the reality of how this is all a system of reference points. And if artists don't have meaning in their lives, how do they generate their meaning in their art to connect with other people? Are we being encouraged to put meaning into things? Or are we being told what's meaningful is how much money you have, the comfort you have, the things you buy? I do think, though, that the opportunity is huge. When you look at Providence, Rhode Island, when you look at Bushwick, New York, when you look at Miami, and in areas that at different points seem to be marginalized and underserved, the artists help float those communities. They helped convert the buildings. They became the designers and the builders who did some of the inside, did some of the paintings on the outside, the murals, brought the attention, brought the news cameras, brought the events, brought the activities, so that people 10 years before I lived in Bushwick were like, don't go to Bushwick, you'll get robbed. When I moved there, you could still get robbed, but it was like, it's worth the risk because the parties are so amazing, the bands are so good. And literally, MGMT, Vampire Weekend, Kid Cudi, I mean, you can name, I don't know how many people, like Lil Mont, all these people were involved in community activities. You would see them in the DIY spots, you would see them at the venues. It wasn't art and community, artists were with you, you know? And so I think we're seeing less of real human connectivity. And I don't know if that's COVID, I don't know what happened, you can make art by yourself, but if you all adventure, anyone here who wants to go with me, we can go visit a goat farm where the guy who runs it paints, and while you're there, you'll meet another artist who does fire spinning and fire juggling. But right now, the way they live is advocating for people who have been affected by environmental contamination in the Gulf South. And it's through their very clear encounter with zoning, but their arts and creativity is kind of what connected them and their passion. So I think the money it costs to live, and for venues, how expensive it is to exist in a place like New York City or DC, having a little art gallery where you let your friends come up and put on their clown gear and only 3 people come look and no one buys drinks because they're sober, that doesn't pay rent in New York. You know, like selling drinks pays rent. And having RuPaul's Drag Race on the, and I like Drag Race, so having sports, have whatever it is on the screen gets money, as opposed to art and people talking about divisive issues, challenging the system. If art is supposed to be a reflection of life, that means we challenge authority. Why would authority want us to have more? But I think you can't stop the art, and that's the beauty. So I look forward to how we can ideate and learn from what happened in Providence, learn from what happened in Bushwick, learn what happened in Charlotte, North Carolina, see what's happening in next to Sarasota, Bradenton, where they changed the zoning so you can do multi-use in some of the traditional single-family houses so that you can run a business that's a store out of your house and keep your job, your family, your life, your church community near each other. And where people who don't drive can actually participate in things. So I think it's there.
Moses?
Yes, I think we have a great example of how art, how music and art actually influence an area. When people think of Austin, Texas, they sometimes call Austin, Texas the music capital of the world. Well, when I was growing up in Texas, we'd go up to Austin. I got to meet Stevie Ray Vaughan at a bar, and he was playing, and there was only probably about 10 people listening to him. All the musicians that came up there, they influenced the way the strip looked. People came there just to hear that. Artists came there just to play. That area there, now we have Shaka, I think is his name, Apollo Montessori, he can get it correct. But he's trying to zone an area in the city just for the musicians to live. But that is what gave the entire city a kind of a name. And now those artists can't keep Austin weird, and the artists kept it weird. We had a guy, Leslie, who walked around in a thong. That was weird. But the city, the artists came there and flocked in, and it brought a vibrancy to the city. And then if I think back when I was a little boy, and the place where I really wanted to go was I wanted to go to this place called Haight-Ashbury. Because all the hippies, they look so good. I said, I gotta go there and hang out.
I was never in on those.
I was just a little boy. And so, but in the Haight, they had, there was a culture. It was the music. The people could afford to stay there, and it turned the whole culture of a state. A music district had Haight-Ashbury. You could look at every major band that played, and everybody who's playing today, who samples all the music, it came out of Motown or Haight-Ashbury. Everything that we listened to and sampled.
Well, music, art, the written word, it drives all of our culture, right? And what I'm hearing kind of in that response, when you think about a lot of great cities, they are known for their culture and their art scenes, right? But our zoning is preventing more communities from becoming that. So now it's becoming a supply and demand issue, right? You want to go to New York, you want to get that old beat type lifestyle, you can't go, right? So I want us to kind of have our closing thoughts. We talked about so much today. I want us to kind of distill it into one action. What's one thing you would tell a planner, if you could, or whomever? Let's all envision this together. I'm the empress who controls zoning reform for the whole globe. What's one thing you need to tell me to do to make sure that this zoning reform movement sustains everybody, includes art in all we do, and allows everyone to have a home? Moses, let's kick us out.
There has to be a place for community where people can come together and express themselves in that community and be free to express themselves. Musically, and you need to bring different types of music, not just classical, not just rock, not just hip hop. You need to bring art in the form of that music. And then that shares across different boundaries. And it gets everyone interested in different things. And it also helps just to expand the mind.
Krishana?
Yes, I would tell you, Empress, to make room for people at the table that do not have the traditional skill set, that don't have the traditional training, that have, especially people that have the lived experience of being in communities that have suffered, from zoning, exclusionary zoning, whatever the situation is, lack of affordable housing, not being able to utilize their land to, for their income and for their livelihood. I would say to continue to make room for folks at the table so that their lived experiences can truly be weaved into the policies to get the outcomes that are meant to pull people out of those spaces that they have been kind of tramped down into. So that's what I would say.
Chris?
Funny enough, I was just in South by Southwest in Austin, saw so much music, and the day I got home, they released a report that they're stopping the music section. Yes,
What?
the final weekend is all music. They do interactive, which is computers, they have the educational, now they have perfume companies and truck companies and people, but they're stopping the music weekends. So Empress, one thing I would say is please figure out mixed use zoning and for smaller entities so that you don't have to take on a $12,000 a month rent to run a space, but where we, as artists, where you can get 4 or 5 artists live in a space together. There are parts of the country where currently they're still zoning against women, single women living in groups, homes together because of brothels or something like that. But there are all these things that I think could be useful, and it then comes back to remember the human. And my statement is, all these conversations, remember this is people. People are part of the government. People are part of corporations. It's not corporations and people. Like, it's all together. And so when I think of how do we have affordable space for artists to gather and make stuff together, then that gets into housing zoning and how we can live in groups. When I think of where do we display our work, so that means we need facilities that aren't necessarily community centers for kids, because there's grown adult visits we need to do as artists. But to where it's not the same thing is, I'm up against a corporate office building that can afford whatever the mortgage or rents are. And for cities to say the music and the art is important, that it is worth it. Cities sometimes subsidizing, putting some money in. And getting back to the old school, before, depending on what community you're from, the government never really helped you anyway. And you had to rely on other people in your community to step up and to put their space up, to put their time up, to put their money up. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But there will, I think, be an element of that, and hopefully those people are in government who can then say, we should stop putting up our friend's house. Why don't we use space that's empty in the city, or figure out how to use all these empty spaces that have been empty for a long time.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Sonia.
You said what I was